Everyone, and welcome back to our 2026 Digital Playbook webinar series. I'm Shane, client partner at Common Ground, and I'm joined by our co-founders Matt and Dan. Today's session is called Content Marketing 2026, Quality, AI, and Distribution. And I think it's a really timely and important topic right now. I think on the one hand, it's kind of never been more challenging to kind of deliver in content marketing when you consider the competition is kind of bigger than it's ever been. Some distribution channels are going through rapid change, like the impact of AI on SEO and rising costs with PPC. And then there's also the impact of AI on content production as well, and the sort of potential risks and challenges that come with that. But on the other hand, there's never been more of an opportunity for those who can actually capitalize on the change in landscape and leverage it for success. So I don't think there's ever been a more important time to kind of take a step back and look at content marketing as a channel, how it's evolving, and how brands need to adapt their strategies, not just to keep up, but to actually win in 2026. So I'm really looking forward to the webinar. I think it'll be incredibly valuable. A few topics I think would be good to cover are what are the biggest challenges for content marketing in 2026 and how brands need to adapt? What are the things which perhaps need to be dialed up or started, or either dialed down or perhaps stopped entirely? And what's the impact on content creation, and how do we need to look at measurement of content marketing in 2026? So let's get started. I think a good place to start will be on what the biggest changes are in content marketing. And Dan, I'll come to you first.
Thanks, Shane. So I think this is a big one, and there's lots of different changes coming up. I think, like we've talked about a number of times in this series so far, is AI is having a big impact on content marketing. I think lots of people are utilizing or using AI just to produce content over and over and over again. Sometimes they're doing it in a good way, but the majority of the times that we see is it's not being done in a really good way. It's just been done as either a cost saving exercise or something that just quickly I can do it via AI using a ChatGPT or a Perplexity or something along those lines. I think going forward, the challenge is going to become, because a lot of AI content is being produced and is being put into the SERPs, that it's maybe going to become like content saturation. I think what we will see is that because so many companies can do this at scale, and they're just putting out really easily poor content, I just think it's going to become saturated. I think what we'll see is that as brands start to understand and start to use AI correctly, they will be the ones that start to step above the saturation and the standard poor content that's going to be produced, the listicle type stuff. And if they add in then like a human insight, a human layer to that AI stuff, and they're not just adding in what the AI has just done the research from, I think that is where those sort of companies will get in. So like your case studies, the real world scenarios, thinking about actually how is this impacting intent around the your ICP and things like that. I think that's the starting point. I think that's going to be the biggest change as we move forward, is the use of AI and the quality that comes out of it. And those that go down purely AI route may be sort of falling away, whereas those that actually use AI as an assistant to move forward.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. I think it will be a change for 2026. I think we're seeing a lot of it even in 2025 as well, certainly in terms of the kind of lower quality AI generated content kind of flood in the market. What I don't think we're seeing is anyone taking that approach actually winning with that approach, because it's purely from an SEO perspective. If you look at SEO as a distribution channel, that's never really worked. Low quality content, whether it's produced by a person or an AI tool, has never really worked. So it just doesn't make sense, I don't think. But I completely agree. I think we'll see it into 2026 as well.
There's been like rapid rise in it in terms of like the Content Marketing Institute have said that 89% of marketers are using AI in their content workflow already. So how that's being used, we don't know, but it's as some part of that content workflow. Lots of people, nearly 90% of those surveyed are utilizing it. It's how they're utilizing it.
Yeah.
Is the importance of that, because Google have come out and said that it doesn't matter how the content's created, as long as that content is of high quality, valuable, and it's not just rubbish that's being put out there. But unfortunately, I think that's what's happening in most cases. Is it's just that rubbish being put out there, no thought behind it. They just know that I can just produce content quickly and at scale, and that's what's going out there.
Yeah, absolutely. And Matt, from your perspective, I don't imagine you disagree that the introduction or the continued adoption, thank you, of AI in terms of content marketing will be a big thing. But is there anything else you're seeing from your perspective in terms of the kind of big things to expect next year?
I think they're knock-on impacts of things like the AI content generation, really. So realistically, the volume of content being created, you're really going to have this kind of noise versus authority. Essentially, it's, as Dan mentioned, it's really easy to create a lot of content, and the people who are going to there's always going to be people that do that. What I've picked up working in digital marketing for over 15 years is essentially, as soon as there's a really easy way to do something, it will be kind of massively overdone and exploited until the next thing comes along. And that's going to be no different with AI content generation. And so it's the people who, essentially the people who will generally take that approach are the same people who generally won't have a strategic plan behind it. They'll just be generating content for the sake of generating content to try and grab up all of this volume of traffic. But realistically, that's not necessarily going to work for them. They're not creating an authority. And that's going to be really obvious to the search engines and the LLMs as well. So there's definitely that. And the other thing is, like with all of this content flooding the market, there's going to be a real issue around trust around buyers. So we saw similarly a couple of years ago when like every search result was an affiliate site. Essentially, people stopped trusting all of the review sites that were there because they caught on to the fact that actually all of those reviews are people who never use the product. They're really biased. They're there to generate revenue. They're not there to generate a genuine review. So I think that's what we're going to see within content as well. There's going to be so much content there, and people are going to become really distrustful and go, actually, this is just AI generated. So, and people will very quickly learn the signs of AI generated content. So if you spend enough time kind of working in that area, you can pick up those and you can kind of read a piece of content and go, yeah, that was definitely created with AI. I saw like completely different industry where I saw like someone had created a kind of a mini computer game or whatever, and all the comments were like, this is AI generated. And it was really obvious as soon as you kind of clicked onto anything, it was a very AI generated game. The people, and as a result, the value to that was really low. Everyone was then very dismissive of it. And that's going to be the same across industry, basically. And there's, not just looking at kind of written content as well. When you're looking at, I think people are becoming very wary of content within social media, AI generated social media influencers. All of this stuff is going to destroy trust within brands or certainly independent content creators. And they're really going to have to struggle and kind of work to build that trust back and kind of stand out from a huge sea of kind of really low quality AI generated, whether that's written content, images, videos, whatever it may be.
Yeah, it sounds like we're all in agreement that kind of using AI for content creation at the expense of quality and authenticity is obviously not the way to go. That aside, what is it that you guys think brands should kind of include in their content marketing strategies and their plans for 2026 going forward? Matt, I'll come to you on this one.
Well, I mean, the key part of that sentence was strategy, essentially. So again, it's it's not just the adoption of AI content generation where this is an issue. It's kind of a broader thing of there's a kind of a habit within digital marketing to mistake tactics for strategy, essentially. So it's very much how are you using that content and why are you creating that content and how are you going to promote that content. So brands really need to work hard over kind of identifying and understanding their ICP and then crafting a content strategy around that talks to that. So very clearly they're kind of the days of going, here's all my keywords, let's create a piece of content that's really optimized for that keywords. Those days we've gotten it, and thankfully so. Like they should have gone a while ago. Essentially what people need to look at is, here's my audience, here's what they need to know, and here's what brands need to be prioritizing, is kind of providing that value to the audience. Also things kind of, obviously you need to be able to set yourself apart. So in order to do that, kind of like human-led storytelling, Dan, you referenced like case studies, those sorts of things, and kind of bringing in kind of original research, benchmarking, whatever it may be. There's been some brands that have been really good at that historically, but I think that needs to be something that every business should be looking at and going, do I have a point of differentiation? Is there things that I know about the industry that other people don't? Is you need a very, essentially, if you're just talking about what everybody else is talking about and using the same sources that everybody else is talking about, you literally have no defensible position. So what's your point of differentiation? Is it we've got some primary research? Is it we've got experts within our business who can, even if you're using kind of AI to generate kind of a base level article, those experts within your business can provide oversight, they can provide quotes, they can provide color to that takes it away from being kind of AI content which references stuff from a couple of years ago to stuff that might have happened last week.
Yeah, I mean, some really, really interesting and useful points there. I think for me, the kind of one that stood out was the strategy piece and having an audience-focused content marketing strategy. I think it's one thing that a lot of people miss out. I think those that do attempt to do it don't kind of do it as well as they could. As you said, they look at keywords for inspiration, they might look at competitors for inspiration, but looking at the actual audience of what are their pain points and what should we be talking to them about, I think is where a lot of people fall down and where they might fall down kind of going into 2026. Dan, I don't know whether you have anything on the strategy side or anything outside of that you think should be a part of people's plans for content in 2026.
I think one of the things Matt touched upon there is like the authority, and I think that's the big thing, is actually turning the brand into an authority, that leadership sort of element. I think what people tend to do is, if they're creating content, whether it's en masse or not, is they just assign it to a company name rather than actually building leaders within that. So and not being scared of building up individuals within the company, and even if they were to move on or stuff like that, it's the quality that they are distributing and creating that is going to build your brand and support that brand. So I think that's something, especially with obviously the EEA stuff, EEAT stuff, and all of that stuff will be really useful. I think on top of that is around, we talk a lot in content marketing, the creation, and that is half the battle, but then there's also the distribution of that and getting that in front of the right people. So whether that's utilizing like organic search, whether it's paid, whether it's email, whether it's sort of digital PR and things like that. So sometimes we just think build content and they will come, but it's not always that case. We need to then create that content and then distribute it in the right ways to make sure that we are getting it to our audience, that we are pushing that in front of the right people. And again, we are building authority, building the brand across everything from a content perspective. The way I like to look at content is that we don't silo it for an individual channel, that we should be able to utilize that content across multiple channels, whether that is in organic and paid, whether that's in social medias, wherever that may be. One piece of content, we should be able to build that out and utilize it in many distribution channels, which will then again continue to build that authority.
Yeah, I completely agree. Distribution is it's often the one area that's, if not forgotten, then certainly not prioritized as much as it needs to be. I think just to kind of myself in the kind of brand's shoes or the marketeer's shoes and try and give some sort of practical advice. I think one challenge that a lot of brands and a lot of marketers face is that they operate in a relatively crowded market. They might be producing a piece of content which a lot of their competitors are producing, and they don't kind of know how to differentiate themselves or create the piece of content as useful as they can. So to give an example, if you work in the HR software space, you might have a piece of content on the benefits of HR software, for example. And I think a lot of people think they can only take that so far. So it'd be good just to get you guys' thoughts in terms of what people can do to actually create the best piece of content possible when you're competing against similar pieces of content on other websites. And then how much kind of distribution should play into that as well. Dan, I'll come to you on this one first.
I think going back to something that Matt said earlier, it's about utilizing data
Yeah.
supplement that content. Like taking your example of HR software, you're going to have customers. So speak to them, customers, and saying what's the benefits being, what are the efficiencies, what are you seeing while using HR software. And then maybe you can also add in surveys and go and survey businesses, whether they're prospects or others, to say, look, how is HR software impacting you as a business? What are you working on? And get all that information. And then you can obviously add that into the piece, and you can do that on a with some case studies and other data from the industry. I think in another part of this series, Matt mentioned about it's not just a one and done type thing. If you're going to do that with data, then you should repeat that on a yearly basis and show that actually this information is really valuable. And then it's your data, it's your information. So when people are looking for that in the industry, they're going to come back to you as the source and that authority. Also, over time, you can start to benchmark it. You can start to see, actually, in 2024, it was like this, 2025, it's like this, in 2026, we saw this. So you can see those benchmarks start to build over time. So I think that's really important. And if you get content like that, pillar content, and I guess this is going back quite a few years now. It reminds me of something we used to do 5, 6, 10 years ago, maybe, where we're creating this pillar piece of content. I mean, the old school could be an infographic, and then you're then distributing that through to third-party sites, digital PR, doing some paid social on it, that type of stuff, to then just distribute that to the right people and your ICP. So I think it's really important that you understand what is your pillar content, what is going to make you stand out, and that's not necessarily going to be every single piece, but you need to have those key ones in there.
I mean, taking it a step further, essentially, if for your example, like benefits of HR software, I would probably challenge, if the client was like, we want to do that, I would probably challenge and go, actually, which ICP, basically. So the benefits of HR software will be very different if you're in financial services compared to if you're in a kind of a high volume hiring situation. Basically, what is important to each of those is very different. How you differentiate yourself is, rather than writing the generic piece, you could write pieces for each specific industry. Obviously, people are only going to see the one that they're interested in. So rather than having a single piece, you have multiple pieces. You can bring in, as Dan mentioned, statistics. You might be able to bring in kind of specific quotes that are, or specific use cases for financial services, for example. And that takes it away from being a very generic piece of content into something that is probably a bit lower in the funnel. It's kind of more middle of the funnel. It's more defensible, and it's kind of less easy for Google to summarize in an AI overview, and you've got that really specialist piece of content that talks to your audience, as opposed to the generic piece of content where you're competing within search with hundreds or thousands of other, it's not just HR software providers, as that topic kind of overlaps with so many other industries, that kind of you take that away, basically. And then the other thing to consider as well is how you create that content. So obviously everything we're saying now could be a blog post, realistically, but doing it in the way we are now, it gives us the ability to promote that via kind of socials with shorts. We can promote it to our email list. We could take the transcript and turn that into a blog post. We could take quotes from this and kind of chunk it down into lots of different areas. So kind of the way to get the most of it is kind of make it a bit more, certainly a lot more specialized, and again, bring it back to the ICP. If you have a piece of content that is relevant to 100 different ICPs, it's probably not a piece of content that you should be considering creating unless you have a lot of time and resource to create content. It's probably a lot better off to create something a lot more specialized in order to reach that specific audience. You get the 10 people within your ICP rather than the 100,000 people who are never going to buy your product.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think that last point on kind of chunking it down into different formats, that would probably be my core recommendation kind of going into next year, because what we're ultimately saying, or what we were saying towards the start of the webinar, was we're encouraging brands to put more value, more time into their content to make it a higher quality and more sort of trustworthy and authoritative. But what comes with that is obviously cost. So we're expecting brands to put more into their content, so it makes so much sense to try and get as much out of it as you can. So whether it's a broad topic that we split down into sort of different markets and different areas of the ICP, or whether it's a topic that we split into different formats, so blog, webinar, guide, white paper, whatever it happens to be, I think there's so much value in that, and I think brands would see quite a sort of return on investment from taking that approach.
Yeah, and realistically, if you're taking product or service experts away from doing what they're normally doing to bring them into some kind of marketing environment and get them to give that time to a marketing team, if you can get 10 pieces of content rather than one piece of content, so do they need to sit and write something for you, or can you create the kind of the base of that, and then you add in their expertise from what you've got from a webinar, from kind of a podcast or that kind of thing. You take the information that you don't need to be an expert to kind of give that general stuff, and then you bring in the expert level insight through quoting and that kind of stuff, as opposed to, dear Mr. Psychologist, in this case, can you write me an entire blog post on this? They're probably not going to have the time or necessarily desire to do that, but they might be happy to kind of, can you come and spare half an hour of your time to be on a webinar podcast, and then we'll take some of those quotes and add them into this piece to make it to that level above.
Yeah, I think that's really valuable advice. I think we talked quite a lot about what brands should do and what they should include in their plans for next year. Is there anything we think either should be dialed down or perhaps even stopped from a content marketing perspective because we just don't think it's going to get as much traction considering all of the changes? Dan, I'll come to you first.
I think for me, it's more about just reshaping and reframing where you're spending some time. I don't necessarily think that you need to remove anything, because the content will be the content's going to be valuable. I think if you go back to the strategy element and go, this is the core goals, these are the core objectives, and really focus on those that are going to have the biggest impact, and maybe just dial down some of the ones that are not necessarily going to have as big an impact. And that may be a little bit around the top of the funnel. You might dial down that a little bit and concentrate more on the middle of the funnel content. I know that we talk about it being quite messy at the moment in terms of where users are coming from, but I think the content element is still plays the same around like the case studies, the really statistical information, the moat content that not everybody can actually create and work around. I think that's where you should sort of spend a lot more of your time, and maybe a little bit less along the fairly generic stuff at the top.
Yeah, absolutely. Matt, from your perspective?
Yeah, I mean, just to pick up, it's not a dial down, it's probably a dial up. Obviously, Dan referenced things like case studies, use cases, that kind of thing. That's where we've seen a lot of kind of success for clients. So I'd definitely dial that up because that is very specific to you. I'll be essentially there's things to do less of, but as Dan said, I wouldn't turn things off essentially. So in discussion with a lot of kind of clients or other marketers, they're all going, oh, the top of the funnel's dead. Let's really get rid of that. And it's like, if your use of top of the funnel was purely for ranking for a specific keyword for SEO, then yes, that I would agree. But realistically, people are going to still be looking for that content at the top of the funnel. How they consume it is completely different. So you might want to, budgetary wise, move it from one pot to another, basically, because you'll still need it for LLMs, you'll still need it for your newsletters, you'll still need it for a whole host of other things. It might not anymore come out of a SEO pot, for example. So kind of, I wouldn't necessarily get rid of that. What I would get rid of is probably volume driven content strategies. So if your content strategy is, let's create 1,000 blog posts next year, probably would definitely not go that route. It's, from my personal point of view, I think quality will always trump quantity from that point of view. And just kind of, there's a huge danger that people are going to create really bland AI content, basically. So definitely just going into it without, even if you are going to use something like ChatGPT to create your content, kind of really putting the effort into train it with a tone of voice, kind of give it example information, give it some data to pull from, all of those sorts of things, which is still going to elevate, because as Dan mentioned, that Google have said that they don't really care about how content is created, as long as the content is good, basically. So if you can differentiate it by giving it that data source and those sorts of things, that will kind of, again, still work. So, but if you're just going in and going, ChatGPT, write me 2,000 words on X, then you're not going to definitely cover all of that kind of stuff.
And Google have already said, and some of their algorithm updates recently, the helpful content stuff is already targeting low value, unoriginal AI stuff. So if you are just creating that en masse, as Matt said, you sticking it in saying, write about this topic, 2,000 words, thanks very much. And then just dumping that on your site, that's not gonna move the needle. So you definitely need to move away from that. I think next year, a lot of lazy AI content is going to be punished more and more. And we need to do more value driven content, as Matt's indicated, towards like the ICP.
And you need content with a purpose as well. So there needs to be a business metric somewhere attached to a piece of content, even if it's at the top of the funnel. What metric do we need to focus on at the top of the funnel compared to the middle of the funnel and the bottom of the funnel? And if you're just kind of going for vanity metrics or kind of those sorts of things, it's always, realistically, you should be able to, and it is really tough in some industries, try and relate a piece of content or something like that back into an business outcome. So essentially, if we know that to drive revenue, you need X number of leads, and you can kind of map that all the way back into kind of marketing qualified leads, then you can do that with the right metrics.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, in terms of what to stop, it sounds like we're all fairly in agreement in terms of, if you are producing low quality content with AI, definitely stop that before you go into next year. And I think when we talk about AI in terms of sort of content production, we tend to talk about the copywriting element more than anything else. But I think there's definitely room for AI to support other elements of content marketing. So it could be research, it could be distribution. It'd be good to get your thoughts in terms of how you think AI can play a role, obviously with human oversight, in the kind of wider content marketing process. I can't remember who I came to last time, so Matt, I'm going to come to you this time.
Yeah, cool. So definitely, it's obviously, we talk a lot around content creation being written content, because this is what we're fundamentally digital marketing. It's what's worked for a long period of time. Where, as you referenced, Shane, where it can be really beneficial is the additional elements that support content creation. And so really trying to elevate what you're creating. So you could use it to really kind of expedite research. You can use it. It's never been kind of cheaper or easier to create probably video, to create images to support stuff. Obviously, it still needs to be high quality, but the ability to create those things has never been easier. So every time you see kind of a blog post, which like historically would have either no images or it might have a really generic image at the top, it's like that's a completely wasted opportunity from a kind of a search point of view. Is there something that you could create to rank in image search? From a distribution point of view, is there kind of video or kind of image options that you can create for social? It's really there. There's never been an easier point to kind of create this multi-channel content strategy, because it's never been easier to create stuff, even going down to, I know this is more around content marketing, but kind of even around paid ads, it's never been as easy to create visuals to go along with your paid ads that are high quality and probably more akin to something that like big brands would use, essentially. And the other good thing, and it's not necessarily about AI at this point, is people's expectation of content has never given such breadth. So there's obviously, you can do you can record stuff with your phone. All of that kind of stuff is now valid content strategy. So if you're using AI to support in other areas, it does give you that budget or that freedom to use make use of those other tactics.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think you've touched on almost every area possible there, Matt, in terms of how AI can support the content marketing production process. Dan, I don't know whether you've got anything in addition to add to that.
I just want to say, like, the AI is a tool that excels at speed and scale. Okay, so what it can do is it can help you in the research, it can help you gather information and stuff like that. But then that needs that human insight to be able to verify that information, to review that information and make sure. What AI currently is not very good at is talking about tone, like using that insight really, and trust that still needs that human element. So we do need to be a little bit wary on how far we go with the integration of AI at this stage in the cycle. As of today, obviously things may change, but for now, we utilize it as the tool that it currently is for efficiencies.
I think the one bit that I would also add as another usage case is, obviously most people are experts within their product or service, and they will understand their ICP and how they use it, but you can use it to get a greater understanding of other industries, basically. So you could, what you have assumed, or if you use it to challenge what you assume or you've already thought about your kind of audience, it might give you other angles. It might give you actually pain points that you've never even considered, basically. So that's the other way that you can use it. You can use it as almost role-playing, kind of feed it what your ICP is, basically, and go, this is your persona, like challenge my assumptions on this is what you're going to care about. And you might find that it's telling you something completely different to what you think is the case. Obviously, I'd then still validate that, kind of ask some of if you get on well with some of your clients, you can kind of ask them whether actually this is what I've been told. Does that resonate with you?
Yeah, absolutely. I think we've kind of talked quite a lot about the kind of what brands should be doing in terms of content marketing next year, and what they shouldn't be doing. Even given all of that advice, which some brands and some marketers might already be aware of, what would you say is perhaps the one mistake that you still kind of expect brands to make next year in terms of their content marketing strategy? Dan, I'll start with you.
I think despite everything we've talked about today, I think people will still create content for the sake of creating content.
Yeah.
And I also think people will create content solely using AI for ease, for cost effectiveness, and sometimes because it's easy and lazy to do. I think one thing as humans, we try and do things the easiest possible way. If there's an easy way to do it, we're going to do it. If there's a hard way and there's an easy way, you're always going to take the easy way out. And I think that's what we are going to see a lot more of, is people just taking this easy approach to content marketing, content creation, rather than taking the hard route, which will have bigger impact, longer term value, and actually impact your return on investment over time. Because ultimately what we want content to do is to influence the deals within the pipeline. I mean, we're moving towards, or we should all be doing, tracking pipeline impact anyway. Content needs to have an impact on your pipeline. And to what Matt said earlier, each piece needs a goal. And in most cases, that's MQL, SQL, deal driven.
Mhm. Yeah, I completely agree with that. I think that probably will be one of the biggest mistakes going into next year. And I mean, to be fair to some people, I don't think it's a big part of it. Definitely is. It's quicker to use AI, and it's quicker just to go with the volume approach. But I think for a lot of people, it's not knowing how to do it properly. I think for a lot of internal marketeers, they're spinning multiple plates. Content marketing is just one channel they're looking after alongside SEO, PPC, email, and everything else. And it's, yeah, I think that's, if you kind of going to learn and kind of invest in your own knowledge, that might be one area to kind of focus on, just to offset that potential mistake.
Yeah, budget constraints may allow that if there's literally a single person
Yeah.
marketing team and they're being asked to do all of this and they have no resource or budget available to them to get some support, whether that's bringing somebody else in or utilizing a third party, then I understand that. But even with that, I think there needs to be decisions made where they go, right, I'm going to prioritize on X or Y, maybe reduce the amount of content that they're doing to produce higher quality content rather than just, filling it with not so good content.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think the part of the issue is going to be we are literally at a turning point within certainly digital marketing, where what you're seeing is essentially the volume of traffic being eaten by Google on one hand, the ease of creation of content on the other side, and you might have a set of senior leaders above you who are measuring traffic, for example, as one of the kind of their scorecard benchmarks, and they're going, where's my traffic is red, so why is traffic red? And the kind of maybe one of the default approaches to that is, if I'm going to get less traffic per piece, I need to increase the amount of pieces of content that I have. Realistically, it's and we've all been guilty of this to a certain extent. People have used that traffic metric as we're getting more and more traffic, things are going well kind of thing, whereas actually it needs to be more around qualified traffic, qualified kind of, and how people are converting into your funnel should be the metrics that hopefully that you're able to report on, and then the kind of the immediate need to try and offset this loss of traffic that quite frankly most brands are seeing at the moment at the bottom. Certainly kind of top funnel content, there's like a real loss of kind of resource sections of websites are taking a hammering at the moment. So you need to kind of try and get people relatively quickly onto the kind of a different set of metrics, basically. And then, because that's where people are going to continue to do things that they probably shouldn't, or kind of have keep a strategy that is no longer working for 6 months to a year past when they should have changed it. It's because it's kind of, to a certain extent, you need to either educate people, certainly if you're reporting to people, or you need to kind of maintain that volume of traffic. And realistically, for a decade, if not longer, you could continue to build a pipeline and increase conversions by creating more and more content at the top of the funnel, because there's an infinite amount, or almost an infinite amount, of search volume there. But that's no longer really the case.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think the point you made, Matt, in terms of how much change we're seeing at the moment in digital marketing, including content marketing as well, is probably going to be the main reason why brands do make mistakes going into next year. Things are rapidly evolving. As I said at the start, channels are changing. Some channels are becoming more expensive in terms of distribution. There's so much change going on, and that might be the kind of key contributor in terms of the mistakes that some brands might make. And kind of on that topic, in terms of the change, I think the last point I'd like to cover, if I can, is considering all of the change in digital marketing and content marketing, if you had to make kind of one bold prediction for next year, whether it's the direction things are going to go, whether it's the performance brands are going to see from content activity, what would it be? I'll start with yourself, Matt.
I think it's definitely going to be content is as much going to become about distribution as it is going to be creation, effectively. So the brands or the websites that have a really clear distribution plan and can get people in front of that content are going to be the ones that do really well. The people who just create content and hope that people are going to find it themselves are going to be the people that are kind of struggling. So realistically, one of the ways to defend against less traffic coming from the search engines is really increase your brand awareness and really increase the usefulness of the other distribution channels that you've got. So if somebody's looking for an answer, rather than their default being Google or ChatGPT, if their default is, I know these guys are going to be talking about it, so I'm just going to go there, that's the best place to be. It might even be because it's ended up in their inbox. Basically, the answer to their question that they've been thinking about for the past week has just come from you via email. That means that you don't need to rely on a single channel like Google, like ChatGPT. So my bold prediction is definitely people who master distribution are going to be the people who succeed in 2026.
Yeah, I completely agree. And my prediction is, I guess, almost a bullet point on yours, Matt, and it's that I think AI tools like ChatGPT will become one of the bigger, certainly one of the fastest growing distribution channels for content marketing. And I think brands need to be ready for that. It's not just a case of relying on SEO and PPC and email anymore. I think they need to start investing in how they can get their content, not just website content, but all types of content surfaced in LLMs like ChatGPT.
And just really quickly on that, it's also understanding that because I don't know, like 200 million searches have gone from Google into ChatGPT doesn't mean that volume of traffic is then going to come from that channel. Realistically, the LLMs are going to generate you significantly fewer clicks onto your website. Quality theoretically should be a lot higher, but don't think that, Google's going to go like that and ChatGPT is going to go like that. It's not. It's kind of ChatGPT will be, if anything, a very shallow kind of uptick. It will increase, but it's not going to 100% replicate the traffic you will be losing from search engines.
Absolutely. Dan, anything to add?
I think you two are both stolen my my predictions, but I mean, I wanted to just talk about, it's not necessarily a prediction to say, but I think I would like it to happen more, is actually content being part of the CRM and understanding and being tracked in a way that we can see the impact on deals. Because if you are creating this higher quality content and we're distributing it in the right way, then what is that impact on the end goal for the marketing team and for the business? So I'd like to see that tracking better within the CRM and how that's coming through. I know we're working with a number of our clients to try and improve that as we go through the process, utilizing terms like HubSpot, etc. But it's really important, I think, going forward, that if we're not creating as much content, but if we're creating better content, how is that then having that impact?
Yeah,
I have also thought of another bold prediction, if I'm allowed a second one.
You are.
Which is, again, related to something that Dan said, the importance of CRO when it comes to content as well is going to explode, essentially, because realistically, if you go to a site like HubSpot, it is so set up to convert, and then you go to most other resource sections, and they are not set up in the same way to convert. There might be no CTAs, there might be kind of nothing within the content, no pop-ups, nothing within the sidebar, and you're just you're not trying to maximize the return on that click, basically. So that's definitely going to be a growth area. I think everybody's going to end up with really much better optimized blogs and resources and webinars and things like that.
Yeah. Well, they'll certainly need to try.
Yes.
Anyway, yeah, no, absolutely agree. That's probably a good point to wrap up today's session. Thanks to everyone who joined. I think we've covered quite a lot in the 30, 40 minutes or so. So the kind of rise of competition, the impacts and sort of challenges of AI in terms of content production and distribution and everything else. And I think the kind of vital need to have a strategic approach to content marketing for next year. I think if there's one kind of message to leave with, it would be that I think content marketing is probably going to play its largest ever role in terms of marketing performance in 2026. I think those that win will have that kind of audience focused strategy that we talked about at the start of the webinar. They'll be delivering the highest quality content possible, and they'll have that really aggressive approach to distribution and CRO that Matt mentioned at the end. If there's anyone watching who wants to sort of continue the conversation, has any questions or explore how we can help, more than happy to do so. Do feel free to reach out or connect with us on LinkedIn. And don't forget, this is just one part of our wider webinar series on digital strategy. And we've got a few more coming up on GEO, local customer journeys, and much, much more. So thanks again for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.